Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. The night of March 21st, 2026. Seoul was not just the capital of South Korea. Seoul was the capital of the world. More than 100,000 pairs of eyes filled Gwanghwamun Square, a historic plaza built over 600 years ago. A royal gate that once stood as a silent witness to the Joseon dynasty, now witnessing something entirely different, something millions of people had been waiting for nearly 4 years. And in the middle of that sea of people, in the middle of tears, screams, and purple army bombs blinking like stars brought down to earth, there was one small moment that was almost hidden. But for the sharp-eyed army, that moment was everything. Jimin, watching RM throughout the entire night. Welcome. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please don't go anywhere, because this is not just another video. This is a full, heartfelt analysis of a brotherhood that not even 4 years of distance could break. To truly understand why the Jimin RM moment that night was so deeply meaningful, we need to go back to the beginning. BTS, RM, Jin, Suga, jhope, JiminWho, and Jungkook are a group that had to halt their activities together due to mandatory military service required by South Korea. The system requires almost all able-bodied men to serve for 18 to 21 months as a defense against the threat of North Korea. One by one, they left. One by one, army waited. And Suga became the last member to complete his mandatory military service in June 2025. But this wasn't just a break from the stage. This was the real test. Could 7 men who had been together since their teenage years, who had together reached the absolute peak of the global music industry, come back with the same strength, the same chemistry, the same soul? And before we talk about Jimin and RM, there's one piece of news that made the weight of that night far heavier than anyone could have imagined. 2 days before the concert, the news arrived. RM, the leader of BTS, suffered an ankle injury during rehearsals for the concert at Gwanghwamun Square. Bigot Music released an official statement. The medical team advised the man born Kim Namjoon to rest for at least 2 weeks. He would need to wear a cast and limit his movement. Imagine how RM felt in that moment. He had been waiting for nearly 4 years for this. The most historic comeback concert in BTS's career. At Gwanghwamun, a location chosen not by coincidence, but because it represents the deepest layers of Korean identity. And suddenly, his ankle gave out. But RM is RM. Although RM's movements on stage would be limited, he would do his best to participate on stage and interact with ARMY and the audience, the agency's official statement read. And that is where the real story of that night begins. 8 p.m. Seoul time, March 21st, 2026. Music thundered from the speakers at exactly 8 p.m. as the signal that the concert had begun, followed by roaring cheers from tens of thousands of fans who filled the heart of Seoul. "Annyeonghaseyo, we're back," said RM, the group's leader, to the audience, triggering hysterical screams from fans waving purple red light sticks and lifting their smartphones into the air. And behind that massive stage stood the Gwanghwamun Gate, built in 1395 during the reign of King Taejo, the first king of the Joseon dynasty. The gate is the southern and main gate of Gyeongbokgung Palace, which had been damaged multiple times by war before finally being restored to its original form and opened to the public in 2010. This was no ordinary stage. It was a collision between the past and the present, between tradition and modernity. And on that historic stage, 7 men stood together again, with one of them seated on a chair due to injury, yet fully present with every ounce of his heart. Now, here we go, the part you've been waiting for. Amid all the spectacle of that night, the breathtaking choreography, the visual projection mapping on the Gwanghwamun Gate, the traditional performers from the National Gugak Center dressed in hanbok, the thousands of voices singing in unison, there was one detail that sharp-eyed army who watched both live and through Netflix's broadcast simply could not ignore. Jimin kept watching RM. Not once, not twice, but throughout the entire concert. Every time the members moved through their choreography, and RM had to remain in his chair with his casted foot, the camera caught Jimin always glancing back toward RM. There was something in that gaze. Not pity, not ordinary concern. It was the gaze of a friend who had been together for more than a decade. Someone who knew exactly how heavy it was to sit there while the music you had prepared together was finally being played before the whole world. Sharp-eyed army immediately captured these moments. Short clips spread across X, Twitter, TikTok, and Weverse. And every single clip exploded, millions of views within hours. Why? Because this wasn't just one member watching another member. This was a love language that needed no words. To understand why this moment carries such weight, we need to understand who Jimin and RM are to each other. RM has been BTS's leader from the very beginning. He was the one who spoke, who served as the bridge between the group and the outside world, who shouldered the heaviest pressure when BTS was still nothing, and who continued to carry that responsibility even when BTS became everything. Recognizing that BTS was at a turning point, RM admitted to constantly asking himself what choices he needed to make and what kind of artist he wanted to be remembered as while working on their new album. Jimin, on the other hand, is the soul of BTS. He is the most emotionally expressive among the 7 members, a dancer who has dedicated his entire life to perfection on stage. And that night, knowing that their leader, the person who had been with them through absolutely everything, could not move freely on stage during the most historic comeback concert of their careers, something inside Jimin simply refused to be still. So he did the only thing he could do. He was present, with his eyes, with his attention, with the energy he sent through a gaze that always found its way back to RM. And as it turns out, Jimin was not the only one showing extraordinary care toward RM that night. When it was RM's turn to sing his verse, Jin, Suga, jhope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook moved toward the leader to create an atmosphere full of energy and support. They surrounded him. They did not let RM feel alone in his chair. Whenever a moment allowed it, the members moved closer to RM, as if silently saying, "You are not alone here. We are right here. This still belongs to all of us." Even RM, who suffered the ankle injury during rehearsals and had to remain seated for portions of the performance, still managed to captivate the audience with his charm that never fades. That is RM. Even seated, he still led. Even limited, he was still entirely there. Among everything that happened that night, there were words spoken by the members, and those words became a mirror of everything left unspoken between Jimin and RM. RM said, "It feels like we're greeting you like this again after 4 years," which was immediately met with thunderous cheers. For years. In ordinary terms, that's one Olympic cycle. For seasons turning. But for ARMY, and for the members themselves, 4 years felt like a century. "ARMY, we finally meet," said Jimin. "I am so grateful to be standing here and speaking to you. And I am so happy that the 7 of us can be together again. We missed you so much." When Jimin said the word 7, every fan watching could feel just how much weight that number carried. Not 6, not 5, 7, always 7. And that night, even with RM seated, that 7 remained whole and complete. Jin added, "The last time we gathered together like this as a complete group was at the Busan concert a few years ago. I am so happy and grateful to be able to meet all of you again." And Jimin, speaking about Gwanghwamun, "I am so happy to be reunited as 7. Thank you so much for filling Gwanghwamun Square like this. I feel deeply, deeply grateful." The concert that night ran for a full hour. BTS opened the concert with Body to Body, followed by Hooligan, and then 2.0. In the middle of the first song, a group of performers dressed in hanbok, the traditional clothing of Korea from the Joseon era, appeared on stage. They performed a passage from Hybe, the legendary folk song often associated with Korean identity, sometimes called the country's unofficial national anthem. It was a unique and breathtaking fusion of modern and traditional Korea. And there was one moment in Body to Body that went viral. When RM sang the line urging the whole stadium to jump, fans raised their army bombs into the air. And when the folk song RM wove itself into the track, the audience joined in singing together. It was in that exact moment, when 100,000 voices merged into one traditional Korean melody, that the camera caught Jimin looking toward RM once more. And this time, RM looked back, a gaze that needed no subtitles, no translation. We made it. It wasn't just about the emotion. That night was also a visual masterpiece. The one-night performance took place in front of the illuminated facade of Gwanghwamun Gate, where large-scale projection mapping and synchronized lighting effects transformed the historic landmark into a breathtaking concert backdrop. visible through a frame-like stage structure. The production placed a strong emphasis on blending contemporary pop staging with Korean imagery. Ink painting-style media art was projected across the stage structure, while performers from the National Gugak Center also appeared in certain segments, adding a layer of traditional sonic texture to the visual narrative. The 7 members' stage costumes were inspired by traditional Korean military and palace attire, reinterpreted in performance-ready materials. The flowing silhouettes and details added visual drama during choreography sequences. Creative director Hamish Hamilton, known for directing large-scale productions for pop icons like Beyoncé and Madonna, led the visual direction of the show. So picture this, on a stage designed to the caliber of a Beyoncé production, with a 14th-century imperial gate as the backdrop, Jimin danced with every fiber of his soul, and every few minutes, his eyes went searching for RM seated in his chair. That was not coincidence. That was love in its purest form. The concert ended, but the story did not stop there. After the concert, BTS delivered touching messages to fans through the Weverse platform. RM, representing the group, expressed gratitude for the success of the concert. Thank you to everyone who joined us for the performance at Gwanghwamun. After a long wait of 4 years, we finally came back as 7 to meet you in this deeply meaningful place. To ARMY, BTS called their fans everything and our greatest pride. They admitted being moved to tears by the cheers that filled Gwanghwamun. When we heard your cheers, we felt, we are finally back. And as RM wrote those words, so many ARMY imagined the moments that cameras had captured that night. Jimin watching over him, members drawing close every chance they had. 7 people who had been through everything together, standing and sitting on a historic stage, as living proof that they were never truly gone. Allow me to go a little deeper for a moment. In a world of entertainment that is all glitter and relentless pressure to perform perfectly, the moment of Jimin watching over RM throughout that concert teaches us something incredibly simple, yet something we so often forget. Presence is the most real form of love. Jimin could not fix RM's injury. He could not give him a healthy ankle. He could not take away the frustration of being a leader who had to sit down during the most historic moment of his group's career. But what he could do, he did with everything he had. He was present, with his eyes, with his energy, with the gaze that always found its way back. And that, ARMY, is what real friendship looks like. Not just chemistry on stage, not just bromance for content. This is 2 grown men who have endured pressures and levels of fame that most people cannot begin to imagine. And through all of it, they still look out for each other. RM himself, in the context of this new album, said that the answer is not from the outside, but from within. Listening more carefully to our own inner voices and honestly expressing our worries, anxieties, and even confusion is the purpose behind this album. And perhaps, that night, Jimin was doing exactly that, listening to his inner voice. And his inner voice said, watch over RM. The Gwanghwamun concert was not an ending, it was a beginning. After their Seoul concert, BTS was scheduled to continue promotions in New York, including an appearance on the popular television show The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. Their world tour will kick off with concerts in Goyang, South Korea, on April 9th, 2026, and conclude with a concert in Manila, Philippines, on March 14th, 2027. Their Jakarta concert is scheduled for December 26th to 27th, 2026. Yes, ARMY Indonesia. You will witness this in person. And when that day comes, remember this Gwanghwamun moment. Remember Jimin watching over RM. Remember that behind that magnificent stage, behind the flawless choreography, there are 7 human beings who look after each other. And as for their album, Hybe claimed their new album, Rm, sold nearly 4 million copies on its very first day. 4 million. In a single day? That is not just a number. It is the world's answer that they had been waiting, and they were more than ready to welcome BTS back. So there it is, ARMY. On the night Seoul became the capital of the world. On the night Gwanghwamun became the most historic stage in the history of modern K-pop. On the night 100,000 people cried, screamed, and sang together in one shared breath. There was a man named Park Jimin whose eyes always came back to Kim Namjoon sitting in his chair. Not because he had to, not because the camera asked him to, but because that is what you do when someone you care about is struggling. You show up. You watch over them. You make sure they know they are not alone. And that is what makes BTS more than just a music group. That is what makes these 7 men extraordinary. Not just their voices, not just their dancing, but the way they take care of each other, behind the spotlights, behind the roaring crowds, behind all the pressure of being one of the biggest names in the world. The moment of Jimin watching over RM throughout the Gwanghwamun concert may never appear in any headline. It may never appear in an official bigot caption, but that moment is alive in the hearts of every ARMY who saw it. And now, that moment lives in this video too. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. If this video moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because we will keep celebrating these small moments of enormous meaning together. BTS is back, and just as they have always proven, they were never really gone. Purple you ARMY. Purple Heart.